Join our family of creators. Your support means the world to us. Subscribe now to the Content Creator channel. Your support keeps us motivated and helps us bring you fresh, exciting content every week. Hit that subscribe button and be part of our journey. So, tariffs are back. Again, can they actually fix anything? Alright, let's talk about tariffs. Yes, tariffs. It's 2025. We have self-lacing sneakers and refrigerators that can probably judge our life choices, yet we are once again debating a trade tool that feels like it belongs in a history textbook, next to powdered wigs and the bubonic plague. The big question hanging over everything, like a giant economically questionable blimp, is this: can slapping a bunch of taxes on foreign goods, these new shiny 2025 Trump tariffs, genuinely fix the American economy? Is this the magic wand we've been waiting for, or is it more like trying to fix a delicate Swiss watch with a sledgehammer? Because from where I'm sitting, the potential for a lot of smashed gears seems alarmingly high. Think of it like this: you have a leaky pipe in your house. A sensible person might call a plumber, but instead, you decide the best solution is to wrap the pipe in a $100 bill and hope the sheer patriotism of the gesture convinces the water to stay inside. That, in a nutshell, is the logic we're wrestling with. The promise is that these tariffs will act as a shield, protecting our industries and workers. But they also function as a wall, and walls, as we know, tend to block things in both directions. So while we're trying to keep foreign competition out, we might also be trapping ourselves in with higher prices and fewer choices. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them. The whole debate is framed as a simple, heroic tale. America versus the world. It's a narrative that's incredibly easy to sell. You can slap it on a bumper sticker, you can chant it at a rally, fight for American jobs. But try chanting, "Let's carefully analyze complex global supply chains and their impact on domestic consumer price indices." Not quite the same ring to it. But the economy isn't a movie. There's no single villain to defeat in the final act. It's a messy, interconnected system, more like a giant wobbly Jenga tower. And the worry is that by pulling out a few key blocks like, say, affordable steel, cheap electronics, the whole thing might just come crashing down on our heads. So, why did this happen? Why in the glorious year of 2025 are we talking about tariffs again? Well, according to the man himself, President Trump, this isn't just a random economic policy, it's a crusade. The official reasoning is a three-pronged attack on America's perceived problems. First, trade imbalances. China, our allies in Europe, mountains of foreign goods versus fewer U.S. exports. The tariffs are meant to be a giant, flashing stop sign, forcing them to the negotiating table. Second, debt reduction, a national piggy bank raid. The United States is sitting on a national debt so large it looks like a phone number. If you tax all the goods coming into the country, the government collects a massive pile of cash. You can then, theoretically, use that money to start paying down the debt. It's like finding a forgotten cookie jar full of money to pay off your credit cards. The only catch is that someone has to fill that cookie jar. And spoiler alert, that someone is usually the American consumer who ends up paying the higher prices. Third, bring manufacturing back home. Shuttered factories roaring back to life. Steel mills pouring molten metal once more. American workers in hard hats earning a good living. It's a powerful nostalgic image. An economic security blanket. Now, for the part that makes politicians' eyes light up like a slot machine, the money. When you slap a tax on billions of dollars worth of imported goods, the U.S. Treasury gets a pretty significant cash infusion. It's the most direct and easily quantifiable outcome of this whole policy. The White House has been trumpeting very large, impressive-sounding numbers. According to projections from the Office of Management and Budget, the new round of tariffs enacted in early 2025 is expected to generate an additional $120 billion in government revenue over the next fiscal year. That is not a small chunk of change. $120 billion is more than the entire annual budget for some federal departments. It's enough money to fund NASA several times over, meaning we could theoretically have a Starbucks on Mars by 2030. This is the core of the tariffs will pay down the debt argument. Proponents say it's a direct payment from other countries, primarily China, into America's coffers. The narrative: foreign nations finally paying to access our massive consumer market. It's a simple, powerful message. However, most economists point out this revenue doesn't come from thin air or foreign treasuries. It's typically paid by American companies that import the goods. These companies face a choice: absorb the cost and make less profit, or pass the cost to consumers as higher prices. Guess which they usually choose? Alright, beyond the government's bulging wallet, what is this tariff adventure expected to do to the US economy as a whole? This is where the story gets a lot less rosy and a lot more complicated. Independent economic forecasting groups, paid to stare at spreadsheets until their eyes bleed, have been running the numbers, and their conclusions are, to put it mildly, concerning. The Congressional Budget Office released a report that's become a central point of contention. It projects the 2025 tariffs could reduce real GDP by approximately 0.5% over the next 2 years. That might not sound like a lot. 0.5%? I've lost more than that in the couch cushions. But in a multi-trillion-dollar economy, it's huge. A 0.5% reduction in GDP translates to over $130 billion in lost economic output. That's more than the projected tariff revenue. So, one step forward in tariff revenue, one and a bit steps backward in activity. The pain doesn't stop at GDP. Forecasts predict a direct hit to American paychecks. CBO estimates about $1,300 less per household per year. This isn't just because goods cost more. It's also because a slower economy means less investment, slower wage growth, and fewer opportunities. So while you're paying more for groceries and a new television, your ability to earn is also taking a hit, a brutal 1-2 punch at ordinary families' finances. Alright, let's drill down on the most immediate and personal impact of these tariffs: the price of everything. This is what happens when you go to Target. When the government slaps a 25% tax on imported furniture, or a 15% tax on electronics that cost doesn't get absorbed by some faceless corporation, it gets baked into the price tag of the sofa, the laptop, the washing machine. The end result? American families are now paying more for the exact same products they bought last year. Multiple studies have tried to quantify this impact. The National Retail Federation calculated that new tariffs could cost the average household an extra $1,500 to $2,000 per year. This isn't a tax on luxury yachts or diamond-encrusted monocles. This is a tax on clothing, shoes, school supplies, car parts, and food. And here's the kicker: it's a regressive tax, hitting lower and middle-income families the hardest. For a family already living paycheck to paycheck, an extra $150 a month is not a minor inconvenience, it's a crisis. It's not just the final product that gets taxed. Tariffs are also applied to imported raw materials: steel, aluminum, microchips. So an American company that makes cars in Detroit now has to pay more for the foreign steel and electronic parts it needs. What do? Well, they raise the price of the finished car. Suddenly, even a product proudly stamped "Made in the USA" costs more. It's a tax that works its way through the entire supply chain, getting a little bigger at every step until it lands squarely on the consumer. The great promise, the emotional core of the pro-tariff argument, is the revival of American manufacturing. The idea is simple: make foreign goods expensive, and companies will flock back to the United States to build their products. It's a beautiful vision. The reality, however, is turning out to be a lot more complicated, kind of like assembling IKEA furniture in the dark. For some specific industries, there has been a glimmer of hope. Certain domestic steel producers, for example, have seen an uptick in demand as their foreign competitors are priced out of the market. They've been able to raise their prices, increase profits, and, in some cases, even hire more workers. But this positive effect is far from universal. For every steel producer celebrating, there are dozens of other American manufacturers screaming in frustration. Why? Because most modern manufacturing isn't about making one thing in one place. It relies on vast, intricate, global supply chains. A car company in Michigan might use steel from Canada, electronics from Taiwan, and rubber from Thailand. When tariffs raise the cost of all those essential parts, the cost of building that car in America skyrockets. This makes the final product more expensive and less competitive, not just globally, but even here at home compared to an imported car that might have a more streamlined supply chain. This leads to a cruel irony. Tariffs designed to help American manufacturing can end up hurting it. Many companies are now facing a terrible choice. They can either eat the higher costs of imported components, which crushes their profit margins, or they can pass those costs on to consumers and risk losing sales. Some are even considering the opposite of what the policy intended, moving their entire production process overseas to avoid the tariffs on raw materials altogether. So, what does all this mean for the American worker? Are the tariffs a job-creating machine, or a job-destroying menace? The answer, frustratingly, is yes. It's not a simple story of net gain or net loss, but a massive, chaotic reshuffling of jobs across the economy. On one hand, protected industries, steel companies hiring again, aluminum companies hiring again, plants reopening after years, good, often unionized jobs. Local communities feel an economic miracle. These jobs make the news, but for every job created, jobs are lost elsewhere. Losses are diffuse and less visible. Study, trade partnership worldwide. Over 400,000 jobs potentially lost. Where do the losses come from? Manufacturers that can't afford raw materials, retailers forced to lay off staff, export sector, farmers hit by retaliation, export sector, factory workers losing markets. It's like a shark attack versus being nibbled to death by 1,000 tiny fish. Both are fatal, only one gets the headlines. The labor market is in turmoil, clear winners and clear losers. It turns out that when you start a trade war, other countries don't just sit back and take it. Who knew? Swift and targeted retaliation has followed the 2025 tariffs. The European Union, China, Canada, Mexico, they designed tariffs to inflict political and economic pain on the United States. They targeted our most iconic exports, Harley-Davidson motorcycles, Kentucky bourbon, blue jeans. The impact on American exporters has been devastating. The agricultural sector has been hit particularly hard. Soybeans, corn, pork. China has largely stopped buying U.S. soybeans. Brazil, Argentina, they've stepped in to fill the gap. Soybean prices have plummeted, silos full, debt piling up. It's a brutal blow to the heartland. So, after all this, we come back to the big question. Will Trump's 2025 tariffs save or sink the U.S. economy? The truth, shown by data and real impacts, is they are unlikely to be the miracle cure promised. They do generate significant government revenue. They provide a lifeline to a few protected industries, but the broader economic consequences are overwhelmingly negative. A handful of very visible winners, a much larger, diffuse population of losers, whose losses outweigh the gains. The core problem, a simple fix for a complex system. The global economy isn't zero-sum. Raising costs for consumers, raising costs for producers, disrupting established supply chains, sparking retaliatory measures from trading partners. All of this introduces friction and uncertainty into our economy, projected drag on GDP, hit to household incomes, net loss of jobs. Together, the medicine looks worse than the disease. In conclusion, the 2025 tariffs are a high-stakes gamble, rooted in a nostalgic, self-contained economy vision that no longer exists. The trade-offs are stark. We're trading away lower prices for consumers, competitiveness for many manufacturers, access to foreign markets for exporters, in exchange for a boost to a few sectors, and a temporary bump in Treasury revenue. Economists overwhelmingly call this a bad trade. Rather than saving the economy, the tariffs are likely a self-inflicted wound, slowing growth, straining family budgets, and isolating America. It's not a fix, it's a different, and arguably worse problem.